I'll call this May 21st BPAC meeting to order at 7 p.m. I guess we can call to order, and can I get a roll call from our secretary?
I'm not sure I have an up-to-date roster here. I got the notification from John this morning. So, who's got a roster? Who knows who belongs here? Annie, you got everybody memorized? Let's go to the website. Climb on there. Cord rather than. Thank you, sir. Are you ready? All right. Yeah. Annie Adams.
Present.
Susan Jones.
Present.
Tommy Griscom.
Present.
Kishi Huang.
Present.
Audrey Ishii. Bruce Michelson is here. Kaneen Portis.
Present.
Sarthak.
Present.
Says Dan Safier.
Present.
Nancy Westcott.
Present.
Zeman, not present. Okay. So we have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Secretary. Moving on to the next agenda item. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to item C, approval of minutes of previous meeting. I don't have the minutes of the previous meeting, so we'll skip that for now. Next agenda item, public input and commissioner communications. Is there any public input? Seeing none, we'll move on to commissioner communications. Are there any commissioner communications? I think this is the part where we chat, and then later there's room for announcements.
Yes.
So this is where I would say Audrey and Charlie Smythe are doing a bike thing to like DC, and you can find them online with their day-to-day travels.
Annie, you were working on a trail. Are you going to provide an announcement on that later, or can we ask how it's going?
You can ask how it's going. I presented to the Historical Commission. I will be presenting to the Arts Commission. I am working on putting together a better resolution that more people will agree to. Right, what's happening is people don't want to agree to the current resolution that I had because they feel that they're signing off on a final path. And I need to make the resolution more like, would you be interested, would we be allowed to do temporary markings on city sidewalks that people could explore and see if they like the route? I did get feedback from the Historical Commission. I think I mentioned this last time. They'd like us to go down Main Street, but Main Street. Yep, accessibility is a real problem, but I do think someone's going to get back to me with a different suggested route, and I think, well, that was actually someone from the Historical Commission also has a different suggested route, and I do apologize I did not reply to your email, but yes, I saw your email, and we can talk about that in 1 second. One thing I would like to mention, though, is a lot of these commissions actually don't meet every month. We are one of the few commissions, and I've heard people mention this to me, and I didn't quite understand what it meant. We actually do meet every month, and we actually do proceed with business every month. A lot of commissions do not have enough people, and they just don't have enough people, and they don't have enough agenda items to meet every month. So I just want to reiterate the importance of this commission. I know it's a little exhausting sometimes because we feel like we're talking to ourselves, but it's very important that we're doing this work, and that's what I'd like to say. But yes, so regarding the Sage Trail, one thing I would like to mention is the biggest comment people have is lots of parking lots. Why are we going through parking lots? I can say the one in Tucson definitely went through went through a big parking lot through the convention center and around the convention center. One of the reasons the route that I created, and again, it is by no means has to be the final route, was I was trying to get people, to connect people from the farmer's market to the Rose Bowl back to behind the Rose Bowl. So that was one of my thoughts on that. And another suggestion someone had was to create more of a figure 8. So those are just my thoughts right now on the update on the Sage Trail. So hopefully next month I can present to the Arts Commission, and hopefully next month I can come back to all of us with a resolution that we could pass that would allow us to get some paint on the ground. Because I think until people actually just walk it, we're not going to get real feedback. Like you can visually look at a map and be like, oh, that's this or that's that, but you really actually have to go out and walk the route. And I cannot emphasize that enough, to see how it feels, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. Because otherwise it's just something on paper. And the whole concept of this is that you're actually just physically present in the world, looking at paint on the ground and following it around. And you can read about all these exciting places. So that's my update on the Sage Trail.
Yeah, so I sent my imagined Sage Trail, like a draft to Annie. My biggest feedback on that is it's a pretty well-designed Sage Trail, while it goes through too many parking lots on the east side. So I did some changes to the Sage Trail that you just so the most east you go is basically like Lincoln Square, and that's it. So I also want to include the Lincoln Square this bus stop to the trail, that people can actually go and leave from the trail from downtown Urbana. And because the bus stop is pretty close to the Lincoln Square Mall, that people can actually get some ACs during this weather and spend some money there, which is good. Shop Urbana, right? So yeah, so that's just my feedback on that. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, transportation, economic development, any other discussion items for the Commissioner Communications?
Any update on how the trail, I think there's going to be a bike trail happening over by Weaver Park. Any idea how that have you heard anything about that? I know it's happening. I'm just curious if there's a timeline or.
Construction will start 2025. We actually went out maybe 2 weeks ago and kind of mapped the trail. It's nothing complete, so I can't really say anything definitive, but construction will begin in 2025.
All right, with that, I think we'll move on to the next agenda item, unfinished business. And it looks like, Annie, you are going to talk about Safe Streets and Roads for All, a grant discussion. Let the record show it is not Annie Adams.
Let the record show Annie was really unsure about what to talk about and passed it off.
And for the record, I felt mostly the same, but I agreed to do it. Okay. All right. So, Safe Streets and Roads for All grant discussion. So we've talked about this at least a couple of times before this year. So just a little bit of background in case you don't remember all the details. So we're talking about a program, a federal program called Safe Streets and Roads for All, which is designed to focus on preventing roadway deaths and serious injuries. And it's lasting from 2022 to 2026, so we're kind of like in the middle of that right now. And I believe, this is the part that I don't have written down, so don't quote me on this, but I believe we received some funding through this program for work done on Lincoln Avenue, and we're hoping to get more funding, and I'll talk a little bit about what kinds of funding we can get. So the focus of this program is on what's called an action plan. So this is a Vision Zero action plan. Basically, what they're trying to do is fund initiatives that either encourage the development of an action plan or the implementation of an action plan. So there's two different grant types. There's planning and demonstration grants, which is what we're focusing on, and implementation grants. And the primary reason we're focusing on planning and demonstration grants is that we don't have an action plan. So yeah, that's the main reason. So you can apply for a planning and demonstration grant to get funding to support the creation of an action plan. But in addition to that, you can apply for funding to support what's called demonstration activities. And we can take a look at that a little bit in more detail in a second. So what we've done so far, so we established a subcommittee that was Audrey and Annie and myself. And we met just once in person, but we've been corresponding over email. So we've drafted a letter to be sent to the mayor and city council. And the main purpose of this letter is to encourage the mayor and the city council to support public works in applying for the grant. So just to keep in mind, we ourselves will not be applying for the grant because as a commission, we're not able to do that. But public works can, and so we can support them to the best of our ability in doing that application. So one of the main things we want to do today is actually take a look at that letter, which we'll do at the end. And if everything looks good, as I understand it, and this is part of the ambiguity in our communications with Audrey, but as I understand it, if this looks good to everyone, then we can go ahead and vote to approve it, basically approving a motion that we would send this letter to mayor and city council. Okay, but one other note, the last thing here on the slide, we definitely need some more direct involvement with Public Works because they know best what is possible and what is needed, and they're going to be the ones creating the application. So at some point, we need to start working more directly with them. And yeah, unfortunately, John's not here today, but in the future, we hope to maybe add him to our subcommittee so we can start to meet with him in person. Okay, so some things we've talked about so far in the subcommittee. In terms of creating a Vision Zero action plan for Urbana, there have been two main ideas which have been floated. So the first was that we might just create an appendix to what's called the Champaign-Urbana Urban Area Safety Plan, which was created by the RPC. But after some communication with them, it became clear that it might be best for us to draft our own action plan, which is independent of that. So we can definitely apply for funding to do that. It's, I guess I would note, though, it's a lot more work to create your own action plan from scratch rather than creating an appendix to a plan that already exists. But that's what we're thinking right now. In terms of demonstration projects, one of the big ones, which is really highlighted in this version of the letter, is speed management. So if you recall last month, I believe it was last month, sorry, I've got a condition called toddler brain, which happens when you have a 2-year-old. Anyway, Audrey presented on speed studies and was proposing that we encourage the city to conduct a speed study similar to those that have been done elsewhere, and consider reducing the speed, even at least temporarily, for testing purposes, for data collection, down to, I believe it's 25 miles per hour citywide. And yeah, there's lots more to be said about that.
I think it's going to be 20.
20?
Yeah, then people will drive 25.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, that could be at least partially funded by one of these grants. So that's why it's a big focus of this letter. Okay, the other things encompass kind of a wide range of different activities. So what I've kind of lumped into the category of temporary bike ped infrastructure and data collection. So I think what they really like, the granting agency, what they really like is if you're doing a demonstration project, then you're going to do some data collection before and after to try to deduce what the impact of that temporary change was. And if it looks like it's a good change and it's resulted in positive outcomes, there is the possibility of making it a long-term change. Okay, so some ideas. Protection for bike lanes, so that could be as simple as like temporary protection, which could be plastic bollards, so these plastic poles. Raised crosswalks and intersections. This one's a little bit more complex, and we struggled a little bit to find good examples of temporary raised crosswalks and definitely temporary raised intersections. There are materials out there produced by companies outside of the US that make temporary raised crosswalks. I think we're just struggling to find an example of a company that makes them in the US. And we've also talked about this idea of a woonwerf, which is like a Dutch concept for, I didn't plan this definition, but like an urban space where cars are welcome, but they aren't really prioritized. And we have an example, I believe it's on Carl, or at the main hospital. I don't know which road it is.
I think typically it's a street that it's at grade with sidewalk, right?
Yes,
So
yep.
you don't have to negotiate ramps to cross it.
Right, yeah. So everything's at the same level.
Yeah, there's one
there-
on the Granger Engineering campus
Oh, okay, okay.
in Urbana.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, not the hospital.
Okay.
And yeah, there might be some obstacles like in the road to kind of encourage cars to slow down. But the idea is that cars and pedestrians and cyclists can all share the same space together. And there's not really a designated place for anybody. It's all shared. So that's another idea that we've considered, which again would be temporary. And then Audrey was talking about public art, and I think what she had in mind was something like crosswalk art or like intersection art. And then also in this letter, I believe she mentioned something about like educational art installations. So yeah, a wide variety of things could fall under that category. Okay, and then we'll get to the end, which is just the letter. So if you haven't had a chance to read through it, yeah, please take a look at it now. And I guess if anyone has any comments already after having read through it or read through part of it, then yeah, we can discuss it now.
For the area where the street and sidewalks and all kind of blend together, are there any barriers, or do people walk around randomly? Because that seems kind of dangerous to me, if there's no indication of where people should walk.
I think that I'm not sure, I'm not an engineer, but I think there may be requirements for truncated domes, or not the domes, the strips,
Okay.
to demarcate the roadway from the pedestrian zone, the vehicle lane from the pedestrian lane. Typically, there's also bollards prohibiting or deterring automobiles from entering the pedestrian zone, or planters, big concrete ones that would ding your ride.
Yeah, the way to think about it is, imagine if in the middle of Main Street in downtown Urbana, right now we have, was it 2, 4, I don't know, a lot of road space is devoted to cars, because we want to make sure those cars can get through that downtown area at an average speed of 35 miles an hour. So imagine if we change the infrastructure through that one block in downtown Urbana, so the cars would go 10 to 15 miles an hour. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to create 2 lanes, and by slowing the large vehicular traffic down to that speed, bikes can also then just use the exact same lane. You don't have to have separate bike lanes. And then also it allows for you to do like bump outs, and so we could have plazas in front of all the businesses, could have plazas. And all you're really doing is creating a space, as described, that Tommy described, where there's more an inequality of movement. So cars just will not. It is. You're creating a design where cars cannot go faster than 25 miles per hour. Yeah, yeah, it's a curve. There'll be like a light, gentle curve. And also, yeah, it's very clear from the infrastructure that this is not a space for you to go 35 miles an hour in. It's not an arterial. You are now in what we'd call a people space for people. But cars are allowed in the space. So it works. I mean, Chicago has a couple. Europe has a ton of them. And anytime they do this infrastructure, the businesses where this happens make a lot more money. The rents always go up. It makes money for cities whenever they do it. So I've found it very interesting that Urbana has not pursued this at all. And I think we all know that downtown Champaign now has shut off Taylor Street and is doing some Taylor Street creating people spaces down there as well. So it's just interesting.
Well, the priority right now is Lincoln Avenue, is that right? I think so.
Yeah, just to clarify, so the Lincoln Avenue corridor study, which is the next item, there's potentially some overlap, but this SS4A grant could cover like a wide variety of different things. So like the speed study, for example, that could be like citywide, not just restricted to one corridor.
I don't want to jump ahead too far, but John gave me some notes to provide the staff report for the next item, and one of them is regarding the SS4A grant. He said that city staff consulted with RPC and for a few reasons decided not to apply for planning or implementation this year, but plan to apply for implementation for the two Lincoln Avenue projects, the one from Florida to Green and the other from Washer to Killarney next year. And then for the planning grant, they said they talked with RPC about the application process and the management of it and how time consuming it was. And that's why city staff is opting not to pursue that this year. I think the planning department is 2 people right now. He didn't mention that. I'm ad-libbing that, but.
So just to clarify, you're saying the RPC is not going to be applying for a grant, but...
Oh, no, sorry. The Urbana talked with RPC, and then Urbana decided not to apply this year.
Okay, so but I see. So...
But 2025.
Correct. Sorry, I didn't read the whole letter. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I mean, we're 6 months into 2024. I'm cool if we're going to apply in 2025. Yay.
So I don't know if I understand this correctly. You're saying... like this letter, for example, there's no purpose in sending it at this time because we're not going to consider applying for this grant during this time?
Looks like he said city staff don't want to apply for a 2024 grant. He doesn't call out the specific years here, so I think he might be open to a 2025, but maybe, I think adding him to that subcommittee and...
That would help.
Yeah.
I think also, I do think adding to the letter 2025 would really, I don't think it's a bad thing to say 6 months from now, we'd like to, I think it's important to start the planning process now, because like the one thing is these just come around every year, and there's no reason why we can't get this stuff together. And then when the time comes, we can help them by having a lot of the work already done. That would be my suggestion, because these are a ton of work.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I was just going through the letter again as you guys were talking, and yeah, as it says, and you probably saw, so we were RPC was awarded a grant for 2024, and we'd now be applying for a 2025 grant. So I think maybe John meant a 2025 grant, that they're not interested in applying for that this time.
That makes sense, because the application cycle right now is for 25.
It is, yeah. 2024 is already over. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
But I think to get a 2025 grant, you need to apply for it in 2024.
Yes, that's right. But I think he's saying that the city staff has decided that they would not like to pursue this grant this year, which would be awarded for next year.
2026 grant.
That's the idea, yeah. Which I think is actually then the last year. If we go
I think
back.
that's right, based off the slides. Taking off my John Zeman hat, my two comments would be, one, the downtown public realm study, there was a mapping activity with a lot of public input, focused on the intersections of Main and Vine. And then I think there was plenty at like Main and Broadway as well. But the intersection at Main and Vine got a lot of upvotes for a comment talking about narrowing the intersection, and one about narrowing it down with paint. And when I say narrowing it down, I mean like neck downs with curb bump outs. And then the other thing I'll say is the city of Urbana has a great and recently new, or I mean relatively new, pedestrian master plan. And I think a lot of the projects cited in there could help inform what kinds of demonstration or like pilot projects we'd want to pursue with an SS4A grant in 2026, if we want to do that.
Yeah, so my impression is, because it's going to be the last year, the approach we try to take is to not just set this to the side completely until next year, but to try to prepare ourselves in advance so we can make a really nice application. And I mean, ideally, we would get funding to create our own action plan, in addition to the demonstration projects. And that might be the best way forward. Because after this, there probably won't be anything, so. Well, that simplifies our job today significantly, because now we don't need to worry about the letter anymore.
Sorry about
About
that.
the letter, though, there were just a couple of things. So,
Yes.
we mentioned CCRPC, and then we said RPC. So, just like in the first paragraph, I'm
Yes,
just looking at it, and
CCRPC.
so we say CCRPC, but in the last line we use RPC, so
Okay.
making it consistent. And the second thing is we've used BPAC in the fourth paragraph, so maybe just abbreviating the first line here and using the full form for CCRPC in the first
Right.
sentence. Yeah.
I imagine there will be a lot of changes to this letter over the next 12 months.
12
But
months.
yeah.
Well, I have to say, though, I
You
think,
can just submit it now.
yeah, I'm
so
with
that-
Sarthak. I
yeah.
think we submit this now. I think we begin
Okay.
to normalize this idea and say, we submitted this, and this is what we're submitting this letter in support of an application that will occur in the year 2025. I mean, they
Right.
have to put it together in the next in the next 6 months, they have to actually start putting this thing together. So it would be, I like how I think it's June already. But they're going to have to start putting this thing together. And so I see no reason why we don't just say, applying in the year the application's in the year 2025, which is the final year for the app, and it would be for, 2026. So I think we submit it. I think there's nothing wrong with submitting this.
We might have talked about this 2 meetings ago, but I think if we submit a letter to City Council saying we want to apply for an SS4A grant, we should be ready to do the bulk of the work and not just write a letter that says staff should apply for the SS4A grant. Because, I mean, positions aren't open for hiring the new planners, and we don't know how experienced. I think we should be willing to put in the work too if we're going to make a request.
So just to clarify, we're not going to vote on this today because then you go back and edit it, right? So that it's talking about next year.
I mean, would it be illegal to make a motion to forward the letter to City Council with minor adjustments to RPC, BPAC, and notifying them that intention to apply in 2026?
I do think we might want to say in there that we would like to discuss ideas with them and, basically let them know that we're willing to do a lot of the work. Find a way to convey that in there. And it would just take a sentence, but that we have ideas and we're ready to do some homework, and, but we don't want to do the homework if it's not going to happen.
And I also think that, as you said, we should add in there about the pedestrian plan and how we will take ideas from that. So I think if we have a draft for the next meeting, that would be a good idea. I don't feel comfortable just not seeing it tonight.
So maybe our homework is all of us actually sit down, read this letter, make some edits, send the edits to Tommy, or how should we manage edits? How do we want
Yeah, you can send them to me, or
Want like a
to
shared-
Audrey.
we could do a shared Google Doc and people could like.
We can do that.
That's what you do in like business environments. You have a shared Google Doc and people go in and make edits.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. How would you guys want to manage the edits?
Google Doc sounds good to me.
That sounds fine. I would say as high level as we can keep it, referencing plans, not projects, would be the only thing.
Yeah, and just saying, we would like to, we have the new master plan, and we have the two things you were talking about, and say we would like to reference those to see where the demand is and come up with some, some plans.
So the thing I'm really good at is, because I often find things like this kind of confusing and overwhelming, what I'm really good at is writing in something, the term is called simple language, and simple language is like the language you're going to use if you're designing a web page, or, and you're making the language accessible to everybody so everybody understands it. So I would be very open to kind of taking this apart and making it simple language. I don't know, though, if that, I know the city of Minneapolis, everything is simple language. Everything they do is simple language, and there's very good reason for doing that, and I don't need to get into that right now, but would you guys be okay? Would the commission be okay if I kind of took a stab at trying to make this just kind of more readable and more easily? Because right now I look at this and I think, oh boy, okay, but I'm a very slow reader, so I don't know. That would be that's my 2 cents.
I say why not, yeah.
I mean, we just bought ourselves another 6 months, so there we go.
Well, I think it would be good to try and get this done for the next meeting, yeah.
All right, to summarize the kind of changes we're looking at so we don't squirrel around, it sounds to me the gist of it is if and when an application is undertaken by the city of Urbana for submission in 2025, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission will stand ready to work constructively with city staff on necessary documents that,
He's got it.
With it here.
He's been working in
I'll
advance.
sit out this
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah, that's the one sentence I was looking at. It's like, we're going to help.
I think we fix that, we'll be pretty close to, where we
Nice. And there is actually an early deadline, at least this year there was one. I believe it was April even. So if for the next round, we might even be able to submit as early as April.
All right, we'll put that in April 2025.
Well, yeah, let's confirm that, but yeah.
Okay.
Unless there's other comments, do I hear a motion to consider edits to this document for the next BPAC, regularly scheduled BPAC meeting? I'd hear a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Bruce moves, Sartak seconds. All right, thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, reports of city official staff and reports of committee. John gave me some notes, and I'll go over there and give them.
Just, do we want to vote on
Oh, geez, gosh. What am I doing? I don't think this needs to be a roll call vote. All in favor of moving this item to consider the edited document at the next BPAC meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Okay, now we move on to the next agenda item.
Tom, thanks for the hard work.
All right. From the desk of John Zeman. It doesn't actually say that. Okay. SS4A grant is the first item. After discussing our options with RPC, city staff decided not to apply for an SS4A grant this year. Instead, we plan to apply next year for a combination of the two Lincoln Avenue projects we have in the work, one from Washer to Killarney and the other from Florida to Greene. By next year's application window for the SS4A grant, the Lincoln Avenue corridor study will be complete, allowing us to incorporate a more developed project description. And I think this is in reference to the implementation side. Following our initial experiences with the SS4A grant awarded to RPC in the city staff decided not to apply for an SS4A planning grant either. We believe that the time spent applying for and complying with such a grant would be better spent working directly on planning activities for the safety of vulnerable road users. Second item is ITEP projects. The city and our consultant held design kickoff meetings for the Florida Avenue Shared Use Path and the Bakers Lane Shared Use Path, respectively, on Friday, May 10th. We met with UIUC Facilities and Services for the Florida Avenue Path and with the Park District and School District for the Bakers Lane Path. The Florida Avenue Path is scheduled for design to be completed in March 2025 with construction following thereafter. An approximate alignment for the Bakers Lane Path was determined through a walkthrough of the site with our partner agencies. We intend to include the mid-block crossing of Main Street in the city's project, although outside of the ITEP grant scope, with close coordination with the Champaign County Forest Preserve District to align with their KRT connection. John notes, you all would be proud of me. I actually rode my bike on-site kickoff meetings from the Public Works buildings to Glover Avenue. I am really out of shape, ... Third item, equity and quality of life projects. The EQL sidewalk construction package is out for bidders now. We'll open bids on May 28th. The EQL streetlight construction package will be advertised for bids sometime in June. The city will purchase the light poles and luminaires soon to get a head start on the long lead time for fabrication, typically 16 weeks. Cunningham Avenue TIF projects is the last item. A small package for pavement patching and sidewalk reconstruction within the Cunningham Avenue TIF district is out for bid now. The sidewalk work includes reconstructing 4 existing curb ramps that are out of compliance. We'll open bids on May 22nd, tomorrow. Also, we are negotiating an engineering agreement for the design of streetlight and sidewalk improvements along Cunningham Avenue, which will include upgrading the street lights along Cunningham Avenue to LED, constructing a new sidewalk along the south side of University Avenue from Maple Street to the existing sidewalk in front of MTD. And constructing a new shared use path on the south side of Perkins Road from Rowena Drive to the existing sidewalk east of Eastern Avenue. That's all I got. He said if you have questions, we can email them to him.
I for one, I'm going to email John about the lighting. I really hope going forward we use dark sky lighting, and dark sky lighting it lights the ground, not the sky. So I'm just going to let you know, I'm going to email him to make sure that we're considering that.
Okay, if there's no other comments, maybe we'll move on to the next item, our new business item on the Lincoln Avenue corridor study discussion led by Tommy Griscom.
All right, thank you. Been a long time since we've seen each other. Okay, so the Lincoln Avenue corridor study. This one you might also have heard about, although I don't think we've really talked about in depth as a part of this commission. There's a really nice website with lots of information, so I definitely recommend that you go check it out. And I'm not going to be able to cover all of the information that's there, but I'll try and give you the general idea. So the scope of the project, or the study, is on Lincoln Avenue from Florida to Greene. So this stretch here, you can kind of ignore the different colors. That's just Google Maps telling me how long it would take to drive. So already on this corridor, the existing conditions, they vary. So from, I believe it's Nevada north, there's 2 lanes on each side with a median in the middle. Speed limit is 30 miles per hour. South of that, it's 2 travel lanes with 1 turning lane in the middle, and it's posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. The primary, or one of the main reasons for this study was that this corridor was recognized as one of the more dangerous corridors in the city, especially the southern portion here, which is actually the one with the lower speed limit, near these state street intersections, so like Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, etc. So the idea is to improve the safety of this corridor. So more background, there's been a couple of outreach events already. One of them the last one was held at a residence hall, and there were a lot of students who attended that, which is great to see. I also went to that one. But I think at this point, it might be a good time for BPAC to consider any feedback we would like to provide, because they have, after the initial outreach event, they collected a lot of information, a lot of ideas from participants, and then now they have proposed some possible interventions, and they're requesting feedback on those proposed interventions. So we can take a look at that together. If we want, we can send some sort of letter or statement, maybe not today, but at some point. So that's kind of the roadmap we're looking at here. Okay, so potential interventions across all scenarios. So this, like I said, let me take a step back. There's 3 primary scenarios that they've described, which we're going to get to in a second. But there are some interventions that they're proposing across all 3. So regardless of the scenario, they're proposing that we do this. So the first is a lane reduction from 4 to 3 from Nevada to Green. So that would make it consistent across the entire corridor, which is great. Mid-block crossings with rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RRFBs. So that's at Oregon, Iowa, and then between Ohio and Indiana and Michigan. So one point to note here is that in their diagrams, most of these crosswalks are actually marked at intersections. So I'm not sure if they actually intend them to be mid-block. They called them mid-block, but it wasn't totally clear. Here's the RFBs. They're very fun. So this is the official description from the FHWA, which is, I think, a highway something association. So
I know one of my questions to them at the open house was, are you going to do the kind of thing where you only put one of these on one side of the street, and then like if you're a pedestrian, you have to like cross over the street, and then you can cross the street because it's only on one side of the street. So that was my question to them: is this actually going to be taking up? Like, are you going to is it going to do both? So it's a little confusing, both crosswalks, I guess. And like as you can see here, the correct answer is yes. It's like what they've done on the engineering campus, where it takes up the whole intersection and people can cross safely.
Yeah. So my understanding of RFBs, because it's kind of a very, I don't know the terminology, but it's a very specific kind of. It's not infrastructure. Someone maybe knows better, but it is described in these government documents very specifically. So like this arrow sign you see here, that has to be there. There is perhaps some room for variation, but my understanding is that the signs would have to be on both sides of the crosswalk. Whether or not it can be activated manually or is activated, as it says, passively here, that would be up to us. but there's some sort of activation that occurs, which then causes these lights to flash when there's a pedestrian who wants to cross. So the idea here is that they're not flashing when there's no pedestrian and cars can just pass as they want. Then when a pedestrian arrives, then they'll start flashing, and then the cars are supposed to stop and then let them cross. Okay, the other potential intervention across all scenarios, which I found kind of surprising and exciting, is what they call access control. So this would be blocking access to Lincoln Avenue from a number of streets, Oregon, Iowa, Indiana, and then they would control the kind of turns you could make from Vermont and Nevada, so they don't be right turn only. A big point that I raised with them in person, I think also to John in this commission, was that we definitely want to maintain access for cyclists from those streets if possible, even if we are closing access to cars.
So
Oh yeah, go ahead.
that would explain to me why they were calling it crossing at Oregon mid-block, because it would be mid-block.
Potentially, yeah.
To cut off the access from cars.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
It was also because like there are a couple of, I think it's Iowa that's too close to the intersection or something, and then
You couldn't do a mid-block crossing because the intersections are too close. Yeah.
that's why like they were talking about like mid-block crossings.
Yeah.
So, removing the crosswalks, trying to align the crosswalk on the other side of this university, like on university side as well. So
Okay.
it's like that, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong, like if I remember correctly.
Okay.
I do have some comments on,
Yeah.
by the way, but
Okay. Well, I would say feel free to jump in because I've got a lot of slides.
Jump in. I would like to see where there are bike lane. I'm thinking particularly about
Yeah.
Green and University to stripe the bike lane through the intersection. So I've seen some city, Annie, you were talking about Minneapolis. For example, they will have a kind of zebra crosswalk pattern painted green following the bike lane to signal to drivers that bikes can be in that intersection. I wish we had it at Maine in Lincoln where that intervention was done. I wish there were RFBs there as well. I think, yeah.
Oh.
The paint at Green and University is a definite, and I think if there's, I'm not really sure the type of streets and the bike paths, but wherever there is a bike lane or a sharrow, I think denoting that bikes can be there where it crosses Lincoln through paint would be good.
I just have a question about the scope of this Lincoln corridor study. Isn't that from Green to Florida? Does that also expand to the University Avenue? Is that
No, I believe it does not include Green to
Sorry,
University.
and I meant to say Lincoln and Green. That was my bad.
Oh,
I misspoke.
okay.
The one that goes
you.
to the university.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Sartak, did you?
my comment is about the width of the street, actually. Like, I think they, in their, all three scenarios that they had shown us during the open house, they had shown like a two-way street with a turn lane in the middle. And from what I understand, there, like, it's only like a 28 or 30 feet wide street. I don't see how that is going to work. And they're also proposing a bike lane on, like, bike lanes on both sides. That's 3
I
4
asked
feet.
them. I asked them how that was going to work, and the way it's going to work is they're going to take out the middle. The lighting is going to go on either side, and so they're going to take out basically what now is a pedestrian refuge,
Okay.
or a boulevard.
But between Pennsylvania and Nevada, it's still pretty narrow.
Right, well, so it's already in that configuration, right, from Pennsylvania, right, to
Yeah.
Nevada. So there's,
I don't think there are like street lights in the middle of the street between
Not there,
Nevada
no.
and Pennsylvania.
Um,
So that's one of my questions or concerns.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll get to the scenarios in a second, but when I asked them about the bike lane scenario and the idea of protection, they said, well, we don't know if we'll have enough room. So, yeah.
I did talk to Rita, at a conference on Friday, and she did say like the scenario one, which says bike lanes on both sides, that's the one that, I mean, again, like it's nothing official until it is, but that's the one that was voted
Yeah,
most,
right,
and that's probably the one that they will go
right.
forward with. But again, do we have enough space?
Sartuk, does that fall within the university's plowing, snow plowing?
I don't think so. I don't know for sure, but I don't think so. But like the sidewalk on the west side, I think that probably is the university's. But again, like I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure.
I just,
I have to check the maintenance matrix. And
one thing I want to note is when they did put in that crossing at Lincoln and Main, which I think we can all agree is probably 50% better than what was there before. And then the other is another crossing at Lincoln and I call it Lincoln and Bake Lab. And then there is there's a third crossing. Stoughton, is it Lincoln and? Yeah, that's the Bake Lab one. But then there's another one. It's Lincoln and it's right after the signalized intersection. Further south. Yep, further south. It's the first one. Yeah, there's three of them. We wanted stop bars. We wanted it to act like the rest of the university infrastructure, which has stop bars and stop signs and asks cars to, if there are pedestrians, to stop. We sent in many letters saying that this is something called a triple threat. Basically, a lot of people get killed in these types of infrastructure. It would be really wise just to put in stop bars with stop signs. And we made that really clear repeatedly, just to let everyone know that was just, it's just an accident waiting to happen at this point. And so it's very disappointing that that never happened. And when I drive down that street, I find it very confusing, and very scary because the pedestrians, I think you're going to stop, and you are not going to stop at all in that infrastructure if you're in a car. You are going to keep going, because otherwise you're going to get rear-ended. So obviously, I would like us to enhance those crossings. I think it would be really great. And I do know that those areas over there would make great like housing and retail spaces. And they're going to, hopefully we will get some dense residential living spaces over there, if not some nice businesses. So again, more, pedestrian and bike traffic will be coming. So that, I just want you to know, we asked for it, we begged for it, we wrote letters, we explained that this is a liability that the city has left itself open to, and we didn't, it is what it is right now.
I can't think of a stretch of pavement in Urbana that has more demands on it, including conflicting demands. I'm delighted we're working on this. I'm delighted that sharper and more experienced minds than mine are. But, the realities are that it is, whether we like it or not, Lincoln Avenue became, with the construction of I-74, the only direct route from the campus up to that interstate, And that's just there as a thing that parents in minivans and delivery trucks and everybody else recognizes. It's students moving in swarms and on bicycles. It is sorority women back and forth in spiked heels migrating like Canada geese sometimes at night. I'm on it with a bike. I'm on it as a pedestrian. It is DoorDash, Grubhub, Amazon Prime pullover trucks, Jimmy John's, people in and out of coffee joints, fights over croissants at Bake Lab. There's so much going on here that it's going to be a very tough equation to sort out. I'm trying to express encouragement and delight for what is going to be a project which is not going to admit of a solution for absolutely everything.
And just to be clear, what we're talking about here only goes from Green Street to Florida, which is that first image, which I have been told is not big enough for a roundabout.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I introduced the confusion with university. Let's get on to the scenarios.
Okay, well, there's a few more slides before that, but yeah, okay. So, okay, I'll go through these quickly. So when we're talking about vehicle access, so one way we can do that is through something that's called a modal filter. So this is just a way to block access to some space for larger vehicles, but not for smaller vehicles. These are actually here in Urbana. So the one on the left, actually, Audrey said she really doesn't like because they don't have reflective material on them. She's worried that someone's going to run into one of them at night.
I have to say, the only bike accident I ever got into was in a situation like this. They had run chains between those poles, and it was the difference between a sidewalk and a bike lane, and I was just trying to get over to the bike lane, and I flipped my bike and woke up in the back of a van. So I'm not, planters would be better. It's pretty. You can put some native plants in it, get some butterflies going.
So yeah, there's many different ways you can do this. This is actually in Eugene, Oregon. So this is in a residential neighborhood. And this is a modal filter that actually allows cars to turn left but not go through. So that's another way you can do it. On the left, I believe that's London. So that's kind of more similar to what you were saying, Annie. And on the right, Switzerland, I think. So many different ways you can do this. But yeah, we definitely want it to be as safe as possible. Okay, so the scenarios. There's 3 of them. I've labeled them like this, and hopefully a way that is helpful. So I've called them bike lanes only, and then short section of multi-use path, and long section of multi-use path. So bike lanes only is quite simply bike lanes along the entire corridor. In this image, it says green to Iowa, but that's incorrect. It's from green to Florida. Okay, scenario 2 is perhaps the most complex. So it's got bike lanes on 2 sides of a bit of shared use path or multi-use path. So that looks something like this. And this, I believe, was the least popular of the 3 scenarios at the last open house. Okay, then scenario 3 is just a longer section of multi-use path. So it's going from Florida to, where is it? Iowa. And just to clarify, this would be multi-use path on the west side of Lincoln, so kind of as pictured here in the image.
And that would be mostly on university turf, right?
Yes.
And the university's okay with that?
There hasn't been a discussion about it as far as I know.
So
about it, by
Less
the way,
popular.
like of these 2 scenarios, the second and the third scenario, the image on the right, I really do not like that crossing of the shared use path, because if you're a car and you're behind the crosswalk, you cannot see the traffic coming in from the left, and yeah, that's just too dangerous for me.
And I've got slides on that very topic. Okay, so yeah, sorry, I want to just get through this so we have more time for discussion. So in case you haven't figured, one of the more popular options is scenario 1. That's the one that I think is the best. You're welcome to disagree, of course. So some of the main reasons why it might be considered the best is that it's consistent across the entire corridor. You couldn't argue that it allows for maximal connectivity. So what that means is if you're a cyclist going in either direction, then you have access to all of the urban space, basically to the right or to the, to either side of the street. As a cyclist, you can easily get into a bike lane from either side, and you can access any of the properties on either side. Whereas with the mixed or multi-use path, you're kind of forced onto one side and can't really go to the other side very easily. The bike lanes can be safe, and this is kind of one of my main points, is if they're protected in some way. And again, there's this open question as to whether or not there's space or what that protection would look like. And then this last bullet point is what I think Sartak was alluding to: no conflicts created with a bidirectional multi-use path. So in general, there's a lot of opportunity for conflict when you introduce like a two-way bike path or bike lane. So ideally, these two-way bike paths are put on streets where there are very few cross streets, which I think is actually the situation that we're talking about with Lincoln Avenue for that particular stretch of the corridor. But also where access is only required on one side of the street. So this is an example from Amsterdam. There's a two-way bike path here. In the image, it's on the left. It's not really marked here in the Google Maps. It's on the right. So there's a bunch of like residential properties, maybe some commercial properties, but on the other side, there's basically nothing. There's train tracks, but there's not really much going on. So this is a good fit for that kind of infrastructure. I have seen, so when I was living in Eugene, they were in the planning phase for a two-way protected bike path or a cycle track along 13th Avenue, and that has since been constructed. And there's a lot of controversy around it. And one of the main reasons was that there were a lot of cross streets. And essentially what they had to do is they had to change the signal phasing at all of the intersections so that there were, instead of two phases, basically, a north-south phase and an east-west phase, they introduced a third phase just for bicycles. And what that did is that slowed everything down, which resulted in many cyclists choosing not to ride on the corridor. So kind of defeated the entire purpose. Now, again, to keep in mind, we're not really facing this sort of issue for these scenarios because there aren't that many cross streets. But as Sartak mentioned, there's this one problematic intersection, and it's not really clear what would be done here. And this is for both of those scenarios involving the multi-use path. There could be a solution, certainly, but it raises these safety concerns. Okay, some other open questions. This is a big one for me. So I live nearby and actually cross Lincoln Avenue usually twice a day to take my son to daycare just across the street. And this is the intersection where I cross. And in the mornings when the traffic is light, I like to cross as a cyclist. Later in the evenings when it's time to pick him up, I really don't like going by bike. And the reason is that there's not really a good way for cyclists to cross. You can use the pedestrian crosswalk, which I believe is probably the best way to do it as a cyclist. But if you don't do that, then you just have to wait for clearing in the traffic. And during rush hour, there usually is no clearing in the traffic, so you're just stuck there. And this is tricky. There's not really an easy solution in this. I haven't thought of one, but if you guys have a good idea, please let me know. And I think what would be nice is if we could have sort of an official suggested method for cyclists. Because as it is now, it's just sort of left open. It's ambiguous. What are you supposed to do? What are the drivers supposed to do? Are they supposed to stop for you? Because legally, I don't think they have to. Certainly not if you're coming from Iowa and you're in the road, then you're a vehicle in the road.
Actually, yes, they legally, cars have to stop for pedestrians.
For pedestrians, yeah, but if you're on a bike coming either from the path here on the right, not at the crosswalk,
And so this would be the one though where they would close off. So let's imagine we see where the fire hydrant is. There'd be a large planter in the middle right there, right? So that's where your planter is. And so then you put your rapid flashing beacons. So the entire that was my question to RPC. Does the entire intersection become a crossing? Are we going to be encouraging people to cross right through the middle of it? Or are we going to ask people to cross over to one side of the street and then you cross over to the other side of the street, which is really dumb. And also, as you know, because you're a cyclist, there's a cutaway there, which is really
Right.
delightful to use, but super scary to use because you'll be using the crosswalk and then you'll want to hop onto that cutaway, which will get you right onto the bike path, and cars coming won't stop for you. So again, this goes back to the same discussion that we had with the city regarding, let's just call it the Brew Lab, not Brew Lab, the Bake Lab, Lincoln Avenue crossing is the infrastructure that the campus has implemented, which is stop bars and stop signs, works. And cars know, like I have cars stop for me when I'm trying to cross the street on Lincoln. I work near the Lincoln and Main Street crossing, and cars will stop for me. I refuse to cross until 2 cars stop because there is no stop bar and the cars will not stop. They will just keep going and they don't know where to stop. Like, am I supposed to stop on top of the crosswalk? Am I supposed, where? So that would be my suggestion, and I'm assuming they've thought through this because my theory is it's going to be the same infrastructure that's on the Granger Engineering campus, which is highly successful. It just works really well. The cars can slowly move down those streets, but the pedestrians have the right of way, as do bikes. And you do have to go, if you're on a bike, you got to go at the pace of a pedestrian if it's crowded. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Tom, I thought you were heading towards or considering a simple, cheap address to the question. We all know the epistemological change that takes place at an intersection when you get off the bike and suddenly you're a pedestrian and you're treated differently. And putting up a sign that says cyclist dismount that's the
I'll be
lowest
honest,
cost thing we can
cars
do.
right now don't stop at this intersection at all. I wave, I jump up and down, I do all sorts of things. I have people flip me off. It's impossible to cross this right now with with the current infrastructure here, whether you're on a bike or you're walking, no one's stopping for you.
But I think he's proposed, so if they have the RFBs, which should help, then should the official method be that you dismount as a cyclist?
No.
No, okay.
And legally, you can cross, like, I don't know if I'm enlightening anybody on this, but when there's the all cross on the University of Illinois campus, you are allowed as a cyclist to move with the pedestrians. It's perfectly legal. On your bike, you do not have to dismount. You can cross legally with the pedestrians in those spaces. It's perfectly legal. So I assume it would be perfectly legal to cross on your bike. Push the button and cross on your bike.
Wait, at the intersection of Lincoln and Iowa, my record time is 3 or 4 minutes of just waiting for cars to stop.
So the only other kind of straightforward alternative that I've thought of, which may or may not make sense, is to have some sort of like a button specifically for cyclists to press, like at the intersection or I guess in this space over here by the path, that would then activate the RFB. But the RFB would have to be like situated in such a way, and as you were saying, Annie, it would have to be clear, like I guess on the pavement, that like that's where bikes cross and you're supposed to stop for them. So that would make it possible for cyclists to activate that and stop the traffic. But I don't know if that's possible or not.
There's an example of that on, I think, is it Lincoln and Green? It's a walk sign that is accessible to bikes, and I think it's a design question that I don't know. I think it doesn't need to be addressed at the planning phase, but a button that a bike or a ped could use to cross Lincoln would be ideal.
Yeah.
I changing topics maybe, but I personally like bike lanes because I can go faster and I consider myself a confident biker. However, I do think there is a psychological safety to a multi-use path, and a physical safety. There's more of a deterrence for cars to enter a multi-use path. I would, maybe I'll sound like a big dummy on camera. Can you talk about the connectivity issue? Because it seems to me a multi-use path on one side of a road would be inconvenient if destinations were across the street.
Yep.
But if destinations were on the same street, it would actually be more convenient than a bike lane. Because I'm thinking,
Yeah.
on a bike lane on each side of the road, like if you're going northbound and want to get to the west, you have to cross the street. But if you want to get to the east, you don't. And that's still true for a multi-use path on the east side of the street, right? So it seems like it really depends on where the destinations and the path are.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, that's a very good point. And one thing that I don't think they ever said explicitly, but I kind of interpreted, was that the idea for the multi-use path might have come from this idea of connecting with the path on Florida. So the idea being, you're coming down Florida and you want to go up to campus, then you just turn and come onto this multi-use path, and then you can go into campus. And that does sound nice. Yeah, I guess coming from the perspective of someone who lives on the other side of the street, I know a lot of people are trying to cross this street to get to the other side, to get to the university, or to come from the university. And say if you're like on Indiana and then you want to, I don't know, go up to Nevada or something, with the multi-use path, you'd have to cross the street and then like cross again, to get onto the bike lane after the multi-use path ends. And so that just doesn't make any sense at all, and nobody's going to use it.
One
So
thought,
yeah,
one
ahead.
thought I have, because I heard at the open house, people were concerned. They kept saying, "Would you really ride in these bike lanes? I mean, doesn't this look dangerous? Like, would you want like?" And they were like, people kept asking, like, "What about not people?" There was just certain, there's just they kept asking. They were like, "Would you really?" I was like, "I would." But what if, like, what I love about the MCOR infrastructure is what I'm going to call a raised bike lane. The bike lane is higher than the road. And that definitely, I think, works and definitely feels safer. You're a little bit taller than the cars. And then it eliminates the whole bollard or the other situation. You can hop in, you can hop off if you want to, but that would just be one thought. I don't know. I suppose some people would say, oh, well, that might be, people might trip over them or something. But that's just one thought I have, is if we could do raised bike lanes. But I did hear people concerned. But in my humble opinion, I think I love the idea of the shared multi-use path. In my head makes a lot of sense, but when you're on campus and people are walking 3 across and you're constantly negotiating on your left, on your right, like, I think it's going to cause a lot of conflict on that level. And then and also the whole, you have to think ahead of, do I need to cross here? Do I need to go there? I, as well, just like the idea of that we can move like the cars. We are allowed to go left or right or whatever direction we need to go on here. And I would like to say the MCOR project as well on Green Street, once they put in those bike lanes, I actually liked. I didn't believe it. I was pretty negative on the whole thing. I was like, this is dumb. You're just putting paint on the ground. It actually works really good and feels really good to ride your bike now on Green Street coming into downtown Urbana. So I actually think it would work, but that's me.
And again, I like bike lanes, especially elevated bike lanes or at level with the sidewalk. I think that is a slam dunk.
Well, believe it or not, I've got a couple slides on that. All right. Well, let's, okay, we already talked about this. Mid-block crossings, are they actually mid-block? And then can we have pedestrian islands? This is a big question. We would love to have those. Don't think there's enough space.
I suppose it would be a narrower crossing or narrower roadway, so it'd be a narrower crossing distance, right?
Yeah. Well,
I still think like you still need like delivery trucks, and like there are restaurants and stuff, like, so you're having like semis and stuff going in through that street too. So buses are like, it's a.
Would deliveries be going down where this access to Lincoln is closed? I thought it would just be bikes and.
Just
So why couldn't
through-
you neck down the street there?
I'm just saying, like, the width of the street, like, you cannot have, like, I don't think we can have an island
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right.
because it's not wide enough.
So I know one of the challenges with pedestrian islands is that they have to be they have to conform to the ADA specifications, and that requires a somewhat substantial amount of width. So we can't really make a narrow island. Okay, all right. So now the fun ideas. Thinking outside of the three scenarios, and then keeping in mind, I guess this is a bit. This point isn't so relevant now, or maybe is. I'm not sure. If there's anything that we can do that's temporary, then that could be funded by an SS4A grant. Okay, so one-way bike paths. So we just talked about, we call them elevated bike paths. The protected bike paths, there's a variety of names for them. So there's a rendering here on the left for one approach that could be taken. So that's not elevated, that's at the same grade as the road, but there's this like physical separation, and this is permanent. This is like cement. But you could alternatively have bollards, maybe with some like buffering with extra paint. So that's very cheap to do. It just requires a little bit more space. So what you see on the right here, this is in Somerville, Massachusetts, and this is elevated. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a curb there on the left, and then there's some parking. And this is basically the same as what you might see in the Netherlands. So this is a street in Amsterdam, and you can see there's two one-way paths on either side of the street, and there is a refuge here, or pedestrian island there, which is quite narrow, and we probably could never build. But you can see basically what this looks like. So the cyclists have access to, either side of the street. This doesn't really show how you would cross, but you can easily get to the other side, and then, you can access anything. Obviously, the urban space here looks quite a bit different than Lincoln Avenue, but this is the kind of infrastructure that supports this kind of urban space. So if we wanted denser mixed-use development, then this is the kind of bicycle infrastructure we would want to support that. I just went backwards, sorry. Protected intersections. So this is like taking it to another level. And I believe I've got a video for this. We can just watch a few seconds of it. Again, there's a rendering here on the left. This image on the right is from the first protected intersection in Seattle, which was, I think, completed somewhat recently. So this can be done in coordination with a protected bike path, but can actually be built on intersections that connect roads that just have like painted bike lanes to the side, and then you kind of introduce the protection as you come into the intersection, which I think is actually the case here. So I don't know if this video didn't work. Well, that's sad. I'll share this, and you can watch the video on your own. It's just this guy on the bike riding through it and explaining how it works. Oh, wait. Here we go. Let's try it out. All right, I think we're actually going to get to watch it.
The future of your business is
I
here.
didn't intend for there to
With
be an ad
Wix,
at the
you get
beginning.
advanced AI capability.
There we go. All right, we're going to just jump ahead.
So we're going to walk through completely what's new and how it works, but I'm pretty excited, and this is going to make rolling through this intersection in particular a lot safer. So let's get right into it.
And let's start with a hands-on example. So I'm heading eastbound here on Thomas Street, and I want to go northbound on Dexter, which is effectively left. So what you do is stop at this outer intersection right here on the bike detector. You'll notice that there's a little blue sign there. Basically every direction there's going to be an indicator and light telling you if your bike is detected. You want to stay in this outer intersection, as you can tell, because there is cross traffic of pedestrians and bikes, and this is called a protected intersection, also known as a Dutch style intersection, because of the separation of bikes, pedestrians from car traffic in the form, as you can tell, of these concrete curbs or concrete loaves that serve as a physical barrier between you and the vehicles. So once the bike signal goes green, it's pretty simple. That's when you enter the intersection. You cross through, and if you're going straight, it's pretty simple. You can just keep going. But this is the novel part. We make a left here, and now we're in that inner intersection where we saw there was additional sort of bike detectors as well. So you can use that same blue sign right there to know that your presence is recognized, and you do the same thing. You just wait now until the bike signal goes green again, and you're basically good to go. So it's all pretty novel because this is Seattle's first ever protected intersection. So it's
Okay, cool. So a couple of things I'll point out there which are a little different from what you might find in the Netherlands. So this is a protected intersection in Amsterdam. You can see it's quite similar. One difference, though, is that in the Netherlands, there's not like a special place for you to stop if you're going to be going through. So that guy in Seattle was basically stopping, oh, hold on, what would have been like right here. If he was coming from this direction, he'd stop here, and then only when it's time to go through, he would then continue. In the Netherlands, I think people just kind of bunch up over here. And the only issue with that is that if there's a lot of cyclists, then it can start to crowd the space, and then someone coming from this cross direction might not be able to easily get through. But so it can be a little bit simpler than what he described.
I like the whole paint, like we were talking about. It was really clear that you were going to expect bicyclists to be going through at that place with all the green paint.
Yes. And let's see, I don't know if I'll have this one queued up in the right spot, but oh, yeah, it's right here.
Protected bike lane.
So this you'll see is actually a little bit less built up than the example in Seattle, and certainly not every intersection
away from traffic
has the protection. That's this intersection here. So you can see a pedestrian crossing, and then there's the protection. So the cyclists just kind of come up here, and then there's a button they can press in addition to the pedestrian button, and that's pretty much it. So it's fairly similar. Okay, so all of those things are conceivably possible, but require a lot more road space. So we're just talking about the issue of not having enough road space. The more protection you have, it's usually going to require more road space, and that goes for the intersections as well. You can also build the intersections with temporary materials like bollards, so that's something, we can think about. Raised crosswalks, I think, a lot of people already know about this. There's many examples of this in the U.S. I don't know if they'd want to put this on Lincoln Avenue, but certainly, something we could think about maybe elsewhere. And then, bike signals would be great. You could have a leading bike interval, which is where the bike signal turns on first, and then the green light turns on for cars, and that lets the cyclists kind of get out in the intersection first so they're more visible. And you can do the same for pedestrians, and I think we already have that at some intersections in Urbana. No turn on red would be great for some of the intersections. Sometimes I'm crossing Lincoln at Nevada, and there's a lot of cars coming in. They're just waiting for an opening in the traffic, and then they want to turn right, so it'd be nice to have that. We could also talk about lowering the speed limit. So we've got 30 miles per hour, which in practice means 35 miles per hour, and then 25. 20, would be great. And that's all I have. So, any other ideas, questions, concerns?
I'm sort of thinking that, okay, if we go with the, let's go with the bike lanes, the whole safe if protected, and as Annie pointed out, our experience has not been that good with willingness to sort of do the extra stuff for protection.
Yeah.
But maybe that could be the temporary plan thing for the grant, and, that we would say, here are some of our ideas to enhance what you're planning on. You're doing this cool stuff, and we would like to help with getting grant money to make it even better, and embellish it.
Yeah, and one of our points was with using the stop bars and the stop signs was just this idea of like normalizing the university area. So this is what's happening. Yeah, it's about consistency. It's creating a consistent driving experience instead of like, and it's the same with like the no turn on red. I wish in New York they just made it illegal. There's just no more turns on red. And I have a good friend who years ago was driving in Chicago, and she was like, man, when they first did it, I just thought that was going to be the end of the world. And she goes, this is just so stressful with this turn on red thing. So again, like no turn on red, it should be an obvious. If it's red, you don't turn. But again, it's all just like, so it's creating this like system that people understand how to use it and not having different things in different places.
And I will say with cars, some cars getting bigger and some cars getting smaller, the little cars with a big car behind it, it's really stressful when you're at one in it.
Yeah, so I think for me, for me personally, the idea of having the bike lanes, doing the bike lane scenario, I really wanted some kind of protection. And I guess I was operating under the assumption that it would be possible. If it's not possible, I'm not really sure what I would support. I mean, certainly if they can put just bollards on the bike lane line, I think that, assuming they can have bike lanes in the first place, then I think they should conceivably be able to just put bollards on the line.
Snow removal will be an issue for which they will just say no.
Sorry, what was that?
Just say like adding a bollard along bike lanes, the biggest issue will be snow removal.
Okay.
And they usually just say no, like we usually.
That was the concern
do that
with the bike infrastructure on the university campus, on Green Street, but they basically have machines that clean that, and so they would just have to have machines. The same machines that are cleaning the Green Street bike lanes would also now be added in to clean the Lincoln Avenue bike lanes. I like the infrastructure picture you showed, which was in Somerville, which makes a lot of sense to me. You just have your sidewalk. Next to your sidewalk, you got your bike lane. And then you have, that to me feels the safest, is just the 1-2 on that. And if it's like erased, basically, then the bike lanes at the same height as the sidewalk, that feels a lot safer as well. And then they used, they had the little strip of pavement. And then they could also, clean both the sidewalk and the bike lane at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
This is an open question, not a rhetorical one, but I'm wondering about where we are and where do you think we're going with regard to the culture and legal environment of the e-scooter. What I'm seeing, in major cities I've been in over the last couple of months and around here, is that, e-scooters seem to operate without any kind of restrictions at all. They don't operate like bicycles, but they go in the bike lanes. They go faster than pedestrians, and they're on the pedestrian sidewalks. They have the cute habit of dropping off the sidewalk into the intersection. Corner of Main and Vine really scares me. We're going to lose an e-scooter there. That's because there's no turn on red control at that point. They're in the quad. They're cheap. They're burgeoning. They're hard to stop. I'm not inveighing against them. They're coming. They're here. But as we were talking, pedestrians, bicycles, cars. I'm worried that the e-scooter really is a whole different creature here in terms of how it's used and where it can go and how it fits in.
I want to take on this question because I'm from a country where e-scooter is so common everywhere. My answer to this is you cannot control them, sadly. They will be everywhere from the pedestrian walk to the bike lane, even though we have physically separated bike line from the drive line. They are still everywhere. You cannot control them. It's pretty bad. But what I would say here is the first stop for the e-scooter is to provide better environment for the bikes. So at least, so for now, for the Lincoln Avenue, I don't think there's a safe bike line. So the e-scooter will just go with the normal cars, which I think that's more dangerous than they mixed up with cyclists, right? So I think the first step here is to provide a safer environment for cyclists. And I think Thartak was going to mention that the Ville, they have some sort of restriction, geofencing, that you cannot bike lanes in university, right?
Bike lanes, yes. Sidewalks,
Oh,
we
yeah.
do not allow them, or we have asked them not to use sidewalks, please.
Oh. Yeah.
But their GPS, they say it's not the best. There is like a 5 to 15 feet error. So,
Yeah,
well, sidewalks
people
are
will keep
within
testing
15
those
feet
arrows
of,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, sadly, yeah.
I'd totally echo Choshi on that. I think, Bruce, you said that scooters are a completely different thing. They're not. They're most similar to bikes. And when you have infrastructure that accommodates bikes, it can also be designed to accommodate scooters. And that minimizes the conflicts between scooters and pedestrians and scooters and automobiles. And it's a better experience for every roadway user. So I really think the focus shouldn't be on punitive or like geofencing, VO out, because there's always private scooters that you can't control. I think really it has to be a more positive, proactive. Let's improve the street for bicyclists, and then, scooters can take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, and that's mine. How can you encourage one less car trip? Whatever encourages one less car trip.
And Bruce, I seem to remember, in the last meeting or some meetings before, we were talking about possibly having a discussion with the fire department people and the police department people to come and join us here.
Yeah, John indicated that if the fire department rep was available, they'd come. I had a conversation also, this is sideline, with the electrical inspector, the city of Urbana. Last week, he was out checking out a solar rig, and asked him what he thought, whether anything was coming into him about lithium-ion batteries, and whether any kind of advisory, preventive, or any other kind of measure should be countenanced. He said he was willing to come by too. These are conversations I think we're going to need to have, possibly down the line rather than right now, because these situations are not coalescing. E-scooters are here. They're coming. They're cheap, and they're part of the whole. I can't even call it an equation. The whole panoply of what we're engaged with here. I meant it, as I said, as an open question as to how they're going to fit in with whatever we try to design. I don't think we have an answer yet.
Yeah, so a fun fact, those scooters, that kind of scooter, it's actually illegal in the Netherlands. They don't allow them. But this issue, I think, is common across all countries. In the Netherlands, it's more of an issue related to e-bikes, and I think it's, somewhat comparable to what you're saying, that they're going at a much faster speed. Sometimes they're larger. And that's an issue that they're also grappling with. Do we make another path, like a third path for the micro-mobility path or something? I don't think we're there yet. Let's try and get the first path.
Yeah, I also think there's going to have to come a point, and this comes from me this is something I had to kind of grapple with when I was a cyclist in Chicago, and I used the Chicago lakefront paths, which are, I've said this before, that's the Chicago lakefront path is the #1 used park in the United States. And those paths are crowded, and I used to ride a very fast bike into work, and then I got my mom's red bike, a red sit-up, it's a more upright Schwinn. I put 3-inch wheels on it. I was doing everything I could to slow myself down and understand that I am not the only person using that bike path, that other people are using it, they're walking on it, they're crossing it. And that is something that the scooters, that's the issue you're having. It's not a problem that the scooters are using the bike paths. but they have to be respectful, and they have to share the path, and they should say on your left, right? And even the cyclists, when they first come in to start riding bikes around campus, they've never ridden around another bike before, so they don't know they have to say, I'm on your left, and they might pass on your right. And so it is like, this is a good problem to have, trying to figure out how we all have to work together. But as a cyclist, it took me a while to, and you know, I did all sorts of things to just slow myself down, because it is really fun to ride a bike fast. I mean, honestly, and make bikes go fast. It's super fun. But you have to understand that you are living in a community with others, and you have to check your speed. So the e-bikes have to check their speed. Just because your bike can go up to 21 miles an hour, you shouldn't go up to 21 miles an hour if that's not the appropriate speed for that space. And that's what we're also saying to cars now, right? As we're saying the same thing. We're like, it's no longer acceptable to go down a residential street at 35 miles an hour. We have to check our speeds. So it's kind of, it's sort of a strange concept in today's world, but we all sort of need to work together and figure out, like, you know, how we can all get home safely and get to where we need to go safely, yet continue to move forward.
I hope we get there. I expect eventually we will. 1,000 years before you were born, when these came in, you remember the adjustments we had to go through there, where people were driving down the interstate, doing this over the dashboard and walking in. You know, you remember there were literally casualties and plenty of broken noses from people walking into phone poles. We got there. We figured out more or less how to accommodate these things. To me, e-scooters right now are the Wild West. You know, the city of Paris banned rental e-scooters all over town because it's just, they couldn't handle the anarchy. That's now. And I see this as an evolving and ramifying challenge. I hope we all grow up. There are times when I'm a little cautious about that because, in case you haven't noticed, the population of the University of Illinois turns over 100% every 5 years. And so educating the population isn't something you can do, like, I don't know, putting chips on the, you know, between the shoulder blades of house cats. Look, I'm back to the thing. This is an interesting, plasmic, crazy time to be doing planning. I'm glad we're trying to do something.
So yeah, on that note, I guess I want to open it up to next steps. I know there's a lot of information here. I don't want to take up too much more of our time. What would you guys like to do with this? Do you feel like we are in a position to, at some point in the future, put together some sort of recommendations to provide to them?
Or do we have questions for them right now?
Yeah, or questions, we could reach out to them.
Whether we have questions, like how, do they have maybe an enhanced drawing of what that intersection, it's Iowa, that you had the image of? Do they have any, they may or may not know what they want that to look like. I'm pretty excited as well that they're thinking of taking those intersections and closing them. I think that's really exciting. I think it would be great. So I'll be curious to see how those discussions go. I know I'm on a listserv for my neighborhood, and I saw a few comments, and I was curious to see if I'd see any more. And I also asked if my street could have that enhanced. The street I was on, so I said people whip down it instead of driving on Florida. They zoomed down my street, and I said, is there any way we could do that? And you could tell she was like, not today. And I was like, all right. But I mean, I am concerned. If you go back to that map, the one intersection I did talk to her about that I said I'm deeply concerned about, and it's the intersection that I would use. Go back further to the map that shows the whole course of study. So the intersection that it's a crossing, there's a large housing complex, and it's Delaware. Is it Delaware? No, yeah, that's Florida. Down here. Yeah, Florida and Lincoln. Yeah, it's Delaware, and so if you see that street there, that's where the buses pick students up there, and then they cross that street and they go left, they go right. That's a massive intersection. I mean, it's a massive space. When I try to cross there at Delaware, on my bike, it's like kind of a multi-stage crossing for me to get there, and there weren't a lot of great. I'm not really quite sure what that's going to look like or how they're going to do that. But that's why I said, well, would it be possible to block off Delaware, make it go so people can't drive both ways down it? So that was my thought. But that's kind of a crazy space there. And then the other space that I talked to her about that people use a ton is the Pennsylvania. You can't see it. It doesn't have a name on it. Pennsylvania right now does not have, when people ride their bikes up that street, there's no infrastructure for the bikes. And then they get to that intersection, and what I learned to do was to hop up onto the sidewalk and push the beg button and then cross in the intersection. But people take right hands on red there all the time. It's very dangerous. It's a weird thing, and I've talked to other pedestrians about it. If you're across the street, on the side, crossing, there's a fraternity on the other side, but if you're across the street, for some reason, when you cross that street, cars never see you. I had a woman say, I was literally standing here. I said, yeah, I said I was literally in the crosswalk, and cars just for some reason do not see you. So I said, we really do need to I said, is it possible to include in the study please just some sort of light enhancement on the approach on either side at that intersection to raise awareness. So that's the other thing, because that is a massive crossing for people right now, getting to and from the university. So
I'd be glad if the light actually detected bicycles. I ran the red today because it was a dead red. I had to use the dead red law and just go because it wasn't going to change for me.
Another question just could be in their scenario one, again, it's the width question, but they just showed the 2 bike lanes, but where exactly it is, they're showing it either it's on the grass, or if it's over the sidewalk, or if they're, it would be good to know where exactly are they showing the bike lanes, what the dimension of the street and the lanes will be in scenario one.
And the good question to that too is, will they be making the street thinner than over by Delaware, right? Because that intersection is crazy. If I'm trying to cross that street, let's say I'm trying to get to the bike lane, or the easiest way to think about it is if you're trying to get to St. Mary's Hill, that intersection's completely wild. You're expected to. It's a massive intersection, and you're expected as a bike to somehow queue up behind cars making right-hand turns to try to go straight across that street. It's just completely nuts.
Tom, I don't know how to phrase this as a question you can take back, but these last 2 observations aim towards one reality here. How to put it diplomatically, the entire west side of that red map is controlled by one property owner. And their participation, their willingness to give ground, is going to be pretty important in this planning process here. So the question is, to what extent the University of Illinois is buying in from the get-go on making the improvements that we're hoping get made here, and how far they might be willing to go in addressing some of these issues having to do with space.
Are you sure the city doesn't own all that sidewalk? And I think the city owns the lighting.
The city owns the sidewalk on most of the part. From what I understand, there is a small stretch of sidewalk that's university owned, but city owns most of the sidewalk. But then again, it's still if you're putting a bike lane, if you're showing a bike lane on or close to a sidewalk, where is the sidewalk gonna go?
Exactly.
So
And the good news is we would like to get our university to a gold level bike university. So if the
I want
university,
to go platinum, but
I'm sorry, or platinum. And so I'm sure the university would be very excited to help raise the level of bike infrastructure.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like we'll prep some questions for our PC and try and get some more information, and then I could give an update during the next meeting.
Have they asked us for any letters of support or anything?
No, they haven't directly reached out to us. No.
I mean, would we just want to reach out to them and say, do you guys want to come talk to us and we can talk to you? And we're really excited about this project.
I'd like to have them come to this meeting.
Yeah, if they have the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like just say, we're really excited about this, and we have 2 or 3. It sounds like from what I can tell, it sounds like we have like 2 or 3 sort of concrete questions, but other than that, we're pretty excited about the ideas and what they're presenting, and it could be kind of fun just directly to talk to them.
Okay, yeah.
And then we could at that point then say, after this delightful meeting, we support one with this, that, and the other thing.
And it's 8:46, by the way.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you all for...
Tom, do you have a motion for this, or there's no proposed action, right?
Well, I guess my action would be to reach out to the RPC. Do we need to make a motion for that?
I don't know.
It's
Okay.
an initiative you can take without.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your patience.
thank you, Tommy. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let the record show there were many applause. Okay. Thanks, Tom.
It'll be in the minutes. It'll get cut out, but I'll put it in.
Next item is announcements. I know that Cynthia Hoyle at MTD is hosting a smart cycling class for any adult riders who don't feel confident on their bike and learn how to use university infrastructure, bicycle infrastructure, and the bike lanes and bicycle infrastructure around town. That's June 1st at MTD. And I think she has a Facebook event. You can go to the League of American Bicyclists or email her at choyle@mtd.org. That's CHOYLE@mtd.org. I think, Sue, is there a full moon ride coming up soon? Maybe that's the
I
wrong.
honestly don't know, but on June 1st, there is a Habitat for Humanity and Prairie Cycle Club tour from Gibson City Hospital, and it's going to be very well supported. The hospital is providing a full breakfast and all kinds of support, and if you just Google PCC Bike to Build ride, because the website is a long name, or go to the Prairie Cycle Club website. Yeah, if you go to prairiecycleclub.org, that's got a link, and it's going to be a really nice ride. There are rides distances from 13.5 to 35 to 50 to 62 to 100. So all kinds of good options, and I helped plan the routes. They're good.
So just an announcement for sidewalk repair. We are going to have the sidewalk, north sidewalk on Peabody Drive between 1st Street and 4th Street. That's going to get replaced, basically. We are going to fix it and make it ADA compliant. And same for north sidewalk on Gregory Drive between 4th and 6th Street in front of Armory, basically. And yeah, so these 2 projects, that's gonna happen over the summer. I'm also planning to have the remaining eco counters that I have sitting at FNS, 14 counters. Hopefully they will be installed over the summer all on campus. I'm working on the campus bike plan. Well, that could be like a future topic as well. Like, can present the goals and objectives and the some of the projects that we are going to accomplish or that are in the plan. And the end of year bicycle roundup is going to, like, we are going to start tagging bicycles next week on campus only. So just, if you're on campus and you find an orange sticker on your bicycle, just remove it and you should be good.
What if we know of a bike that should be removed?
Well, we are going to tag all of the bicycles.
Okay.
So if the bicycle remains tagged but after 15th of June, we will call it abandoned and the parking department is going to impound it.
Yeah, it's something real quick. So just a reminder, if you're interested in joining the book club, we're having a CU Urbanism book club starting on Sunday, June 2nd at 2 p.m. at Cafeteria & Co. here in downtown Urbana.
What do they read? I'm just curious.
So the first meeting, we're going to decide what we want to read and the meeting cadence. So yeah, you're welcome to come with any books you're interested in reading together with us or ideas.
You're talking history, sci-fi, what? I mean,
Urbanism. So, which means, so similar to what we're talking about here, so it could be issues in transportation, mobility, yeah, things like that, housing, et cetera.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Are there any other announcements? Okay, sounds like future topics. The next item one might be crafting a letter for city council regarding the SS4A. Another might be the campus bicycle plan update.
Yes. But
Not before July, the campus bicycle update. Any other future topics?
Well, add a conversation with the fire department at their convenience.
Conversation with the fire department. And then potentially RPC coming to talk about the Lincoln Avenue corridor study as it progresses through engagement. Okay, if those are the only future topics, I'd hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Bye.
All opposed, same sign. This meeting is adjourned.